the lone rider and a claim. The Wyoming wind, a constant, abrasive companion, greeted Cole Mercer as he reined in his horse. Buck. Before him lay the double bar, a ranch whispered to be cursed, a bargain sale for a man with nothing left to lose. The dust on the horizon was a permanent fixture, mirroring the grit in Cole's soul. The main cabin, a sagging testament to neglect, leaned precariously, its windows like vacant eyes. A broken fence post lay prone, a silent invitation to any wandering livestock. This desolation, however, didn't deter Cole. It beckoned him. Solitude was a balm, and the sheer scale of the work ahead was a welcome distraction from the ghosts that rode with him. He dismounted, the creak of his saddle a familiar comfort. The air was thick with the scent of sagebrush and dry earth, a raw, untamed perfume. He spent the first weeks in a blur of ceaseless labor. He replaced rotten planks on the porch, his calloused hands surprisingly deft with a hammer. The roof, a sieve during the last spring rains, received new shingles, each one nailed with a satisfying thud. He cleared the choked well, drawing up cool, sweet water, a small victory in the vastness. Mornings began before dawn, fueled by strong coffee brewed over an open fire, and ended long after sunset, his muscles aching with a satisfying fatigue that drowned out the sharper pains of memory. The only sounds were the wind, the occasional lowing of his 2 purchased cows, and the rhythmic beat of his own labor. This was his sanctuary, a place where he could simply be without judgment or pity. Then, one sun-drenched afternoon, as Cole was wrestling a stubborn fence post into the ground, a disturbance rippled across the quiet landscape. A cloud of dust, larger and faster than any natural phenomenon, appeared on the eastern trail. It resolved itself into a finely appointed carriage, drawn by 2 spirited bays, a stark contrast to the rugged terrain. Cole straightened, his hand instinctively going to the Colt holstered at his hip, a habit born of years on the trail. This wasn't the kind of vehicle that strayed into this forgotten corner of Wyoming without purpose. The carriage pulled to a halt, a respectful distance from the cabin, and a driver, stiff in livery, hopped down to open the door. From within emerged a woman silhouetted against the bright sky. She was dressed in traveling clothes that, even dust-streaked, spoke of fine tailoring and an unfamiliar world. Her dark hair was neatly pinned, escaping in soft tendrils around her face, which was strikingly beautiful despite the faint smudge of dirt on her cheek. She was an anomaly, a delicate wildflower blooming in a field of thorns. "Mr. Mercer?" Her voice was clear, surprisingly strong, cutting through the dry air. She approached with a determined stride, her gaze unwavering. Cole merely nodded, arms crossed, his expression unreadable. "My name is Annabelle Whitaker," she announced, her voice gaining a slight tremor of apprehension as she took in his formidable presence. "I believe there's been a misunderstanding regarding this property." She held out a folded piece of parchment, its edges softened and torn. "This ranch, or at least half of it, belongs to my late husband's family. It's the Whitaker land." Cole took the deed, his thumb brushing against the worn paper. The tears in the parchment were unmistakable, creating a jagged line down the center. He unfolded it slowly, his eyes scanning the faded script. His jaw tightened. "This ranch is mine, ma'am. Bought and paid for, every last acre." His voice was a low growl, laced with the dust of the trail and the weariness of a man who'd fought for everything he had. Anna bristled, her chin lifting defiantly. "That may be what you believe, Mr. Mercer, but this document clearly states otherwise. My husband's father, Jedediah Whitaker, was granted half interest in this land. It's been in our family for generations, even if it hasn't been actively farmed in some time." Her eyes swept over the nascent repairs, a flicker of something akin to approval in their depths before it was quickly masked by indignation. You can't just come in here and claim what isn't yours. And you can't just waltz in here with a piece of paper that looks like a dog got hold of it and claim half of what I just put my last cent into, Cole retorted, his patience fraying. He gestured expansively at the desolate landscape. Look around, ma'am. This place was a ruin. I'm the one putting sweat and blood into it. Where were the Whitakers then? We were dealing with other matters, Anna replied, a defensive flush rising on her cheeks. That doesn't negate our claim. My husband intended to return and reclaim what was rightfully his. His untimely death simply delayed things. Her voice softened on the last words, a hint of genuine sorrow in its tone. Cole scoffed. A short, sharp sound. Delayed things? It looks to me like you're trying to stake a claim on my hard work. I bought this land fair and square from the county, clear title. There's no mention of any Whitaker claim in the records I saw. He folded the torn deed and handed it back to her, his movements brusque. You've wasted your journey, ma'am. This ranch is mine. Anna clutched the deed, her knuckles white. I assure you, Mr. Mercer, I am not mistaken, and I am certainly not leaving. My lawyer will be in contact. Until then, I suggest you consider that you may be trespassing on my property. She turned on her heel, her elegant skirts kicking up a tiny cloud of dust, and marched back to the waiting carriage, leaving Cole standing alone amidst the vast, silent plains, his hard-won peace shattered by the arrival of a woman and a crumpled piece of paper. The wind, it seemed, was not the only force that sought to uproot him. Divided house, divided hearts. The gavel's sharp crack echoed in the small courtroom, sealing their fate. Until such time as this court can thoroughly examine the legitimacy of the deed presented by Ms. Whitaker, Judge Thorne intoned, peering over his spectacles, and given the conflicting claims, I see no immediate legal basis to evict either party. Therefore, I rule that Mr. Mercer and Ms. Whitaker shall cohabitate the Double Bar Ranch. A temporary division of responsibilities and resources will be established, and you will both return in 6 weeks for a further hearing. Cole clenched his jaw, the rough wood of the bench digging into his palms. Cohabitate. The word felt like a brand. He cast a furious glance at Anna, who met his gaze with a defiant, chin-up stare that dared him to challenge the ruling. This wasn't a fresh start. It was a prison sentence. Back at the Double Bar, the silence within the ranch house was heavier than the dust motes dancing in the afternoon light. Unspoken boundaries sprang up, invisible walls dividing their shared space. Cole retreated to the master bedroom, the one he'd claimed from day one, leaving Anna to stake her claim in the smaller, less renovated guest room down the hall. Their footsteps sounded unnaturally loud on the worn floorboards, each creak a testament to their mutual discomfort. The first argument ignited over coffee. Cole, accustomed to his solitary morning ritual, found Anna already at the stove, the aroma of her strong brew filling the kitchen. He poured himself a cup from the pot he'd made, only to have her snatch it away. That's mine, she stated, her voice tight. I made that pot. You can make your own. I made coffee every morning for years on the trail, Cole retorted, his patience already fraying. I'm perfectly capable of sharing a pot. And I'm perfectly capable of not sharing with strangers, she shot back, pouring her own cup with a flourish. He grumbled, slamming a separate pot onto the burner, the clatter echoing the rising tension between them. Ranch management became a daily battleground. Cole had a methodical approach, a system honed by years of working with livestock and land. Anna, while clearly no stranger to hard work, had a different rhythm. He'd leave a gate latched a certain way. She'd unlatch it. He'd stack feed sacks in the barn. She'd rearrange them. "What in tarnation were you thinking, moving that hay?" Cole demanded one afternoon, finding a carefully constructed stack in disarray. "It's going to get water damage if it's not properly covered." Anna wiped a smudge of dirt from her cheek, her eyes flashing. "I was thinking it was blocking the light to the tack room, and there's plenty of tarp to go around if you'd bothered to use it on your stack." "It was fine where it was." "No, it wasn't." Their personalities grated against each other like two rough stones. Cole favored early mornings and quiet evenings, often reading by the dim glow of a lantern. Anna, while rising early, preferred the radio to be playing, her humming often puncturing his attempts at peace. He ate his meals quickly, efficiently. She lingered, often staring out the window, lost in thought. One evening, Cole returned from mending a fence line, his muscles aching, to find the dinner he'd planned. A simple steak and potatoes, replaced by a stew he didn't recognize, simmering on the stove. "What's this?" he asked, eyeing the bubbling concoction with suspicion. "Dinner," Anna replied, stirring it with a wooden spoon. "I figured since you're incapable of planning more than one meal at a time, I'd take charge tonight." "I had a plan," he protested, "and I don't even know what's in this." "It's beef stew," she said flatly, "and it's delicious. Or would you prefer to go hungry?" He sighed, the fight draining from him as the rich, savory aroma began to work its magic. He ladled himself a bowl, the first grudging acknowledgment of her presence, and found, to his annoyance, that it was indeed delicious. The house, once a sanctuary of solitude for Cole, was now a constant reminder of his altered reality. Her scent, a mix of lavender and something earthy, lingered in the air. Her forgotten hairpins lay on the bathroom counter. Her books, dog-eared and well-loved, appeared on the living room table beside his own. Each small intrusion chipped away at his carefully constructed peace. Yet, in moments of quiet, he found himself noticing the way the sunlight caught the copper strands in her hair when she bent over a chore, or the determined set of her jaw when she wrestled with a stubborn window latch. The division, though palpable, was beginning to blur, not in a way that offered comfort, but in a way that tightened the knot of tension in his gut. This shared life forced upon them was a volatile mixture, simmering under a fragile lid, threatening to boil over at any moment. Winter's embrace. Winter arrived not with a gentle dusting, but with a vengeance. The first signs were subtle: a biting wind that stole the heat from the day, a sky the color of bruised plums. Then came the snow, not in delicate flakes, but in a relentless, blinding torrent that swallowed the landscape whole. By morning, the Double Bar Ranch was an island of white, the world beyond its fence lines erased by an impassable drift. The power flickered and died, plunging the house into a profound silence broken only by the howl of the wind and the crackle of the dying embers in the hearth. Cole, already wrestling with a bulky generator in the frigid barn, cursed the timing. He'd barely managed to feed the horses before the snow became too deep to wade through. Now, a critical water pipe had frozen solid, and the generator, usually reliable, was refusing to spark. His breath plumed in the cold air as he fumbled with a wrench, his fingers numb. "Need a hand?" Anna's voice, surprisingly clear over the wind, startled him. She stood in the barn doorway, a thick woolen shawl wrapped tightly around her, a lantern swinging gently in her gloved hand. Her face, usually set in an expression of guarded determination, held a flicker of concern. Cole grunted, not looking up. "Just about got it." He tugged harder at a rusted fitting, gritting his teeth. The wrench slipped, skinning his knuckles. A sharp oath escaped his lips. Without a word, Anna stepped forward. "Let me see." She knelt beside the generator, her eyes scanning the intricate network of wires and hoses. Her small, nimble fingers, despite the cold, moved with an unexpected confidence. It's not getting fuel, she murmured, tracing a line with her fingertip. And this isn't right. She pointed to a corroded connection. My father always said a generator's like a stubborn mule. You gotta know where to push. Cole watched, a knot of surprise tightening in his chest. He'd pegged her for someone whose hands were more accustomed to paperwork than rough machinery. Yet she worked with a focused intensity, her brow furrowed in concentration. She picked up a smaller wrench from his toolbox, her movements precise. With a delicate twist, she freed the connection, and after a moment of careful inspection, used a small piece of wire from her pocket to clean the terminals. Try it now, she instructed, stepping back. Skeptical, Cole hit the starter button. The generator sputtered, coughed, and then, with a gratifying roar, roared to life. Warm air began to flow from its vents. He stared at her, genuinely impressed. How'd you know? Anna shrugged, a faint flush coloring her cheeks. My father was always fixing things. I watched him. And a ranch, Cole. It's not just paperwork. It's knowing how to keep things running when the world outside shuts down. Her gaze met his, and for the first time, the animosity between them seemed to recede, replaced by a shared understanding of their predicament. Back in the house, the generator provided a fragile connection to the modern world, but the real warmth came from the massive stone fireplace. Cole had built a roaring fire, its flames casting dancing shadows across the rough-hewn beams. The aroma of pine and smoke filled the air, mingling with the scent of the simple stew Anna had prepared from their dwindling supplies. They ate in silence, the only sounds the crackling fire and the mournful whine of the wind outside. Cole watched Anna across the small, scarred table. The firelight softened the sharp angles of her face, highlighting the determined curve of her jaw. She ate slowly, methodically, her eyes occasionally drifting to the window, where the snow continued to fall, thick and relentless. There was a quiet strength about her, a resilience he hadn't fully appreciated. He noticed the way she carefully scraped every last bit of stew from her bowl, a small practical gesture that spoke volumes about her resourcefulness. This stew's good, he offered, breaking the silence. Anna looked up, a faint, almost imperceptible smile touching her lips. It's all we had. We'll need to ration our supplies if this keeps up. He nodded, a new, unwelcome thought forming in his mind. He'd planned to ride into town for supplies in a few days. Now that was impossible. They were truly isolated. Looking at Anna, huddled by the fire, her silhouette stark against the glow, he realized something else. In this vast, white expanse, trapped by winter's fierce embrace, they were all each other had. The thought was both unsettling and, surprisingly, not entirely unwelcome. The tension between them, while still present, had shifted. It was no longer just about ownership and old grudges. It was about survival. And in that he saw they were unexpectedly, unequivocally on the same side. The storm raged outside, but inside a different kind of storm was brewing, one of grudging respect and a growing, undeniable awareness of the other. The shadow of Silas Crow. The wind, a relentless sculptor of snowdrifts, had begun to recede, leaving behind a landscape of stark, glistening white. Silas Crow, a man whose ambition was as vast and unyielding as the Wyoming sky, sat astride his stout quarter horse, a dark silhouette against the pale morning. His gaze, sharp and predatory, was fixed on the double-bar ranch below. Smoke curled lazily from its chimney, a domestic detail that grated on his nerves. He'd envisioned that smoke rising from his chimney, rising from a ranch he'd finally absorbed into his sprawling empire. The thought of Cole Mercer, that arrogant interloper, and now Anna Bell, the inconvenient widow, occupying what he considered rightfully his, was a bitter pill. He stroked the thick, grizzled beard that framed his hard jaw. a slow, malevolent smile spreading across his face. Patience was a virtue, but action was more satisfying. Later that morning, the fragile truce between Cole and Anna shattered. Cole, trudging through the still deep snow on his morning rounds, swore loudly enough for Anna to hear it from the porch. She found him by a section of fence, 3 strands of barbed wire cut clean through, lying uselessly in the snow. Beyond, a dozen head of cattle, their breath steaming in the frigid air, ambled toward the distant horizon, oblivious to the boundary they'd crossed. "What in tarnation?" Anna breathed, her voice tight with disbelief. Cole's face was a mask of furious concentration, cut deliberately. He knelt, examining the clean breaks in the wire. This wasn't a deer or a falling branch. This was a man with wire cutters. He rose, scanning the expanse of undisturbed snow. No tracks. They came in, cut, and left. Anna's eyes narrowed. Who would do something like this? Cole's jaw tightened. Silas Crow. He's been sniffing around the deed for months, trying to buy us out or run us off. He figures if the ranch isn't profitable, we'll fold. Well, he's got another think coming, Anna declared, her voice ringing with unexpected resolve. We need to get those cattle back and mend this. The blizzard, though weakening, still had teeth. The air was a biting lash, and the ground was treacherous, hidden beneath a fresh layer of powdered snow that disguised ice. They worked in a silence born of necessity, their breath pluming around them like ghostly signals. Cole, surprisingly, was the more methodical of the two, securing the fence posts, his movements precise despite the cold. Anna, though less experienced with fencing, was quick to learn, holding the heavy rolls of wire steady, her gloved hands raw from gripping the cold metal. As they strung the new wire, the biting wind whipped around them, tearing at their clothes. Cole, noticing Anna shiver uncontrollably despite her heavy coat, paused. You need a break. She shook her head, her face pale but determined. No, we just need to get this done. He grunted, a sound that might have been approval. The sheer physical effort and the shared enemy chipped away at the animosity that had been a constant companion since her arrival. They moved with an unspoken rhythm, a strange, almost fluid dance of cooperation in the brutal elements. When a particularly stubborn section of wire refused attention, Cole braced himself against a post, grunting with effort, and Anna, without a word, pushed against his back, adding her weight to his. For a fleeting moment, their bodies pressed together, a warmth, however small, against the vast cold. He felt the resilience in her slender frame, the surprising strength. Hours later, the last strand was secured, taut and glinting in the fading light. The cattle, herded back with much shouting and arm-waving, stood huddled near the barn, their breath frosty plumes. Cole straightened, rubbing the small of his back. That's not the last we'll hear of Silas Crow, he predicted, his voice grim. Anna looked at the mended fence, then at Cole, her face smudged with dirt and her hair escaping its braid. No, she agreed, a new kind of steel in her voice. But he'll find us ready. The words hung in the air between them, not a promise of peace, but a pact against a shared threat. The fire in the stove, when they finally stumbled back to the house, felt like a sanctuary, a small, hard-won victory in the face of a looming shadow. Trial by fire. A piercing shriek, not of a person but of tortured wood, jolted Cole from a fitful sleep. He sat bolt upright, the scent of smoke, faint at first, then rapidly thickening, stinging his nostrils. He was out of bed in an instant, pulling on jeans and a shirt, his heart hammering against his ribs. The glow outside his window was not the pale dawn, but an angry, pulsing orange. "Fire!" he roared, not even sure if Anna was awake, but the urgency in his voice was undeniable. He burst into the frigid night, the cold air a stark contrast to the radiating heat. The barn, Their barn was a towering inferno, flames licking greedily at the dry timber, already consuming the loft where hay was stored. Sparks, like malevolent fireflies, danced in the inky sky, carried by the wind towards the main house. Panic, cold and sharp, threatened to paralyze him. But then he saw her. Anna was already there, a bucket in each hand, her face illuminated by the inferno. Fear etched into her features, but defiance blazing in her eyes. She ran to the water trough, plunged a bucket in, and with a grunt of effort began to douse the nearest wall of the barn. "Silas," she choked out, her voice raw with fury. "He's trying to burn us out." Cole didn't need convincing. This was no accident. The fence cutting, the cattle released. This was the malicious escalation of a man determined to break them. He grabbed 2 more buckets and joined her, the heat on his face already unbearable. The air was thick with the acrid smell of burning wood and singed hair. The crackle and roar of the fire were deafening, a monstrous beast devouring their livelihood. They worked in a desperate, relentless rhythm. Fill, run, throw, repeat. The water hissed and evaporated on contact with the superheated wood, seemingly having little effect against the monstrous blaze. Sweat plastered their hair to their foreheads, mingling with the soot that streaked their faces. Their muscles screamed in protest, but they pushed past the pain, driven by a shared primal instinct to protect what was theirs. "The horses!" Anna yelled over the din, pointing frantically to the far side of the barn where the stalls were. "Are they out?" Cole had forgotten, his focus narrowed solely on the towering flames. "I didn't see them," he shouted back, adrenaline surging anew. He sprinted towards the smaller side door, the heat intensifying with every step. The smoke was thicker here, burning his lungs, making his eyes water. He fumbled with the latch, his fingers clumsy with urgency, finally yanking it open. 2 terrified horses whinnied, stamping their hooves, their eyes wide with fear. He grabbed their halters, pulling them out into the relative safety of the yard. Anna met him, her face grimy but relieved. "Thank God," she gasped, before turning back to the relentless task of fighting the fire. Hours blurred into an eternity of backbreaking labor. The sky began to lighten, a faint gray against the vibrant orange of the flames. They had formed a human chain, passing buckets of water from the trough to the most vulnerable sections of the barn. Slowly, agonizingly, they began to gain ground. The main structure was severely damaged, the loft a charred ruin, but they had managed to save the stalls and the tack room, preventing the fire from consuming the entire building. When the last lick of flame was extinguished, leaving only smoldering embers and a thick plume of smoke curling into the morning sky, they collapsed, side by side, on the damp earth. Their clothes were soaked, torn, and covered in soot. Their hands were raw, their faces streaked with black. Exhaustion, profound and absolute, settled over them like a heavy blanket. Cole coughed, tasting ash, and slowly turned his head to look at Anna. Her eyes, usually so vibrant, were red-rimmed and bloodshot, but there was a new depth in them, a quiet strength he hadn't fully appreciated before. She looked back at him, a ghost of a smile touching her lips. "Well," she rasped, her voice hoarse, "that was a morning." He managed a weak chuckle. "You could say that." He looked at the charred remains of the barn, then back at her. "We saved it, Anna. We really did." A silent understanding passed between them. The fire had been a crucible, a trial that had forged something new between them. The animosity, the suspicion, the constant bickering. For a few desperate hours, it had all vanished, replaced by a singular purpose, a shared fight for survival. In the quiet aftermath, amidst the smell of smoke and the chill of dawn, a fragile seed of trust had taken root. "He's not going to stop, is he?" Anna said, her voice barely a whisper. Cole shook his head. "No, but neither are we." He met her gaze, a new resolve hardening his own. Not now. Not after this. They sat there for a long time, watching the smoke rise. Two smudged, weary figures against the dawn, their shared silence more eloquent than any words. The ranch. Their ranch was still standing, battered but not broken, and so were they. Softened edges. The morning after the fire dawned with an unsettling stillness, the air thick with the acrid scent of charred timber and singed hay. A pall of smoke still rose in faint wisps from the smoldering ruins of the barn's far wall. Exhaustion had etched deep lines on both Cole and Anna's faces. Yet a different kind of energy, a quiet determination, simmered beneath their weariness. Cole, after a brief, restless sleep, found Anna in the makeshift pen they'd rigged near the still-standing section of the barn. Her back was to him, her posture slumped with fatigue, but her hands moved with a surprising tenderness. He watched, unobserved for a moment, as she knelt beside a small, trembling calf, its fur still damp from the firefighters' efforts. The animal, spooked and disoriented, nudged its head into her side, emitting a soft, mournful bleat. Anna stroked its head, murmuring reassurances Cole couldn't quite make out. Her voice a low, soothing balm. Her fingers, usually firm and purposeful, were now gentle, tracing patterns on the calf's head and neck. She pressed her cheek to its flank for a moment, a gesture so unguarded, so inherently kind, it caught Cole off guard. He'd seen her grit, her unwavering resolve, her sharp intelligence, but this raw, maternal softness was new, a revelation that chipped away at the last vestiges of his rigid preconceptions. The image of her, dirt-smudged and exhausted, comforting a frightened animal, imprinted itself on his mind. He cleared his throat, and Anna startled, looking over her shoulder. A faint blush rose on her cheeks. "He was scared," she explained, her voice a little husky. "Lost his mama in the confusion for a bit, but they're reunited now. Just needs a little extra comfort." Cole nodded, a warmth spreading through him that had nothing to do with the lingering heat of the fire. "Good work, Anna." The words felt inadequate, but they were all he had. Later that afternoon, as they surveyed the damage, mapping out the daunting repairs, Anna found herself observing Cole with a renewed perspective. His jaw was set, a familiar stubborn line, but it no longer felt like a barrier. Instead, it was a testament to his resilience, his unwavering resolve. He moved through the wreckage with a quiet authority, assessing beams, clearing debris, his movements economical and strong despite his obvious weariness. The fire, meant to break them, seemed to have only forged him harder. As he hoisted a charred plank, his muscles straining, Anna felt a profound sense of safety settle over her. Here, amidst the chaos and destruction, was a man who wouldn't back down, a man who would protect what was his. And she realized with a jolt what was theirs. The thought sent a peculiar shiver down her spine, a blend of apprehension and something akin to hope. The bitter wind whipped around them, yet Cole's presence felt like a shield, solid and unyielding. The evening descended with a quietude that felt foreign after the explosive events of the previous night. Dinner was a silent affair, eaten by the flickering light of a single lantern. The usual tension that crackled between them, the unspoken challenges and pointed glances, had dissipated, replaced by a comfortable, almost companionable silence. They were too tired for arguments, too raw from the fire's aftermath for anything but a shared understanding. Cole watched Anna across the table, her hair still slightly disheveled, her eyes shadowed with exhaustion but also holding a new depth. Her lips, usually set in a determined line, were slightly parted, relaxed. He found himself drawn to the way the lantern light caught the faint smudges of soot on her cheek, the gentle curve of her jaw. He wondered what she was thinking, if she felt the same shift in the air between them. He cleared his throat, but no words came. Anna, feeling his gaze, looked up. Their eyes met across the small table, a silent conversation passing between them. There was no accusation, no defiance, only a quiet acknowledgment of the shared ordeal, of the trust that had bloomed in the heart of the inferno. A faint, almost imperceptible smile touched her lips, and Cole felt his own lips curving in response. The air thrummed with unspoken emotions, with the weight of mutual respect and a burgeoning, undeniable attraction. The ranch, scarred and damaged, felt more like home than ever before, not because of the land itself, but because of the woman sitting across from him. This shared silence, this new intimacy, was a different kind of fire, one that warmed him from the inside out. He leaned back in his chair, taking a slow breath. "We'll get through this, Anna," he said, his voice low, a promise not just to her, but to himself. She met his gaze, her own eyes alight with a quiet strength. "I know, Cole, we will." The night deepened, wrapping them in its embrace, and for the first time in a long time, neither of them felt truly alone. Echoes of the past. The scent of charred wood still clung to the air, a constant, acrid reminder of their recent loss. But today, the smell was overlaid with the fresh, clean scent of pine and sawdust as Cole and Anna worked to rebuild the barn's collapsed wall. The rhythmic thud of Cole's hammer echoed in the afternoon stillness, punctuated by the scrape of Anna's plane smoothing a rough beam. They moved with a newfound, unspoken coordination, a silent choreography born of shared purpose. Later, as Anna meticulously scraped old paint from the kitchen's wainscoting, her fingers snagged on a loose panel near the hearth. Curious, she pressed. With a faint click, a section of the wall receded, revealing a shallow, dusty compartment. "Cole, look at this." Her voice held a note of genuine surprise. He set down his sandpaper, his brow furrowed as he knelt beside her. Inside the hidden space lay a small, leather-bound box, its surface cracked with age. He carefully pried it open. Nestled within, tied with faded ribbon, were a handful of letters, their parchment brittle and yellowed. The ink, though faint, was still legible. Anna's breath hitched as she recognized the looping script on the topmost envelope. This is my great-grandmother's handwriting, from before the turn of the century." Her fingers trembled as she unfolded a letter, her eyes scanning the lines. "It's about the ranch, about her brother, Samuel, and a deed." A faint blush spread across her cheeks as she looked up at Cole, a flicker of vulnerability in her eyes. "It talks about him leaving his share to her, to pass down through the family." Cole took the letter from her, his gaze intense as he read. The details confirmed much of what Anna had claimed, adding weight and legitimacy to her story. The cynical edge in his eyes softened, replaced by a thoughtful introspection. I was wrong about you, Anna," he admitted, his voice rough with uncharacteristic humility. "I let my own past cloud my judgment." He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture of quiet frustration. "My wife, she died 5 years ago, a ranching accident. After that, I just wanted to be left alone. I built walls, and I assumed everyone was out to take something from me." His gaze met hers, raw and exposed. "I projected my own grief onto you." The air thickened with unspoken emotions. The dusty letters lay between them, a tangible link to a past that now felt inextricably entwined with their present. Anna reached out, her hand hovering over his arm before gently resting there. Her touch was light, comforting. "I understand, Cole," she murmured, her voice soft. "I lost my husband, David, just last year. It was sudden, a heart attack. One day he was there, the next he was gone. We had so many plans for this place, for our future." A tear traced a path down her cheek. "Coming here, reclaiming what I believed was ours. It was terrifying. I felt so alone, so lost. David was my rock, and now I'm afraid of being alone again. Her gaze, though still tearful, held a flicker of resolve. I just want to honor his memory, to build something here like we always dreamed. Cole's thumb absently stroked the back of her hand. The shared grief, the sudden brutal loss, connected them in a way their arguments never could. He saw not a formidable adversary, but a woman scarred by loss, fighting for a future she believed in. The fire in her eyes, he realized, wasn't just defiance. It was resilience, a fierce determination to not be broken. He felt a stir of something deeper than respect, a protective instinct he hadn't known he possessed. "You're not alone now, Anna," he said, his voice low, a promise hanging in the air between them. The hidden compartment, the letters, their confessions. It felt like a hinge point, a quiet turning in the story of the double bar, and in their own unfolding narrative. The echoes of the past had finally found their voice, and in doing so, had begun to pave a new path for their future. The trap and the truth. The scent of charred timber still clung to the air, a constant reminder of their loss when Silas Crow's sleek black truck rumbled up the lane. He emerged, a wolf in a custom-tailored suit, a thick manila envelope clutched in one hand. A predatory glint shone in his eyes as he surveyed the half-rebuilt barn, then landed on Cole and Anna, who stood side by side, shovels still in hand. "Mercer, Whitaker," Silas drawled, his voice oily smooth, "heard about your unfortunate incident. Terribly sorry to see such a fine ranch suffer." He flashed a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Which is why I'm here. I've come to offer a solution." He unfurled several legal-looking documents, placing them on the makeshift workbench they'd set up outside. The papers were neatly typed, filled with dense legalese. "I understand the rebuild costs will be astronomical, and with the legal dispute still hanging over your heads, it's a precarious position. I'm offering to buy you both out. Clean slate. No more worries." Cole's jaw tightened. He glanced at Anna, whose expression was unreadable, a cool mask of concentration. "And what exactly is your generous offer, Silas?" Cole asked, his voice low and laced with suspicion. Silas chuckled, a dry, rustling sound. "A fair market price, of course. Enough to get you both started somewhere fresh. But to sweeten the deal, and considering the urgency, I've drawn up an expedited agreement. Sign these today, and the funds will be wired by morning." He pointed to a specific line on the documents. "It's a joint sale. Both your signatures are required." Anna stepped forward, her gaze sweeping over the papers. She picked one up, her fingers tracing the printed words. "Expedited agreement," she murmured, her voice soft but clear. "That's awfully quick, Silas. And what happens if only one of us signs?" Silas's smile faltered just for a fraction of a second. "Well, the deal would be void, of course. It's an all-or-nothing proposition. Simplifies things for everyone." He leaned in, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "Look, Anna, I know you're new to ranching. It's a hard life. And Cole here, he's got a lot of history he'd probably like to leave behind. This is your chance to escape the mess." Cole's hand instinctively went to Anna's arm, a silent signal of warning and unity. He met Silas's gaze, a challenging stare. "I think we'll hold on to our mess for a while longer, Silas. Thanks for the offer, but we're not signing anything today." Anna, however, continued to scrutinize the papers. Her brow furrowed slightly as she pointed to a small, almost invisible clause near the bottom of one page. "What's this section, Silas?" "Assignment of water rights and mineral leases?" She looked up, her eyes piercing. This isn't just about the land, is it? You're trying to acquire our water and mineral claims at a fraction of their value, bundling them into a quick sale you hope we're too desperate to question. A flicker of genuine surprise, then anger, crossed Silas's face. His smooth facade cracked. That's standard boilerplate, Anna. You're overthinking it. I don't think so, Cole interjected, stepping closer. You came here hoping to catch us at our lowest, assuming the fire would blind us to your usual tactics. You thought we'd be so grateful for a way out. We wouldn't read the fine print. But you underestimated us, Silas. You underestimated Anna. The air crackled with tension. Silas's eyes narrowed, shifting between Cole's resolute stance and Anna's unwavering gaze. His carefully constructed trap had sprung, but they hadn't been caught. You'll regret this, he snarled, his voice losing its polished edge. That judge isn't going to side with a half-torn piece of paper, Anna. And Mercer, you're just tying yourself to a losing battle. He snatched the papers, crumpling them in his fist, and stalked back to his truck, the tires spitting gravel as he sped away. A heavy silence descended after he left. Anna looked at Cole, a ghost of a smile touching her lips. He didn't expect us to work together. He didn't expect you to see through him so fast, Cole replied, a grudging admiration in his voice. You saved us from a huge mistake. Anna just shrugged. Teamwork. It seems to be our new normal. Later that afternoon, as the sun began its descent, painting the sky in fiery hues, the sheriff's cruiser pulled up. Deputy Miller emerged, a somber look on his face, holding a thick envelope. Cole, Anna, I have the judge's ruling. It just came in. Cole felt a knot tighten in his stomach. This was it, the moment of truth. He exchanged a glance with Anna, a shared breath held in anticipation. Miller cleared his throat, opening the envelope. He read the official decree aloud, his voice steady. The legal jargon blurred, but the core message rang clear. The court finds, in favor of the plaintiff, Annabelle Whitaker, affirming the validity of the deed presented and granting her full legal claim to half ownership of the Double Bar Ranch, effective immediately. A profound stillness settled between them. Anna's hand instinctively went to her chest, a mixture of relief and disbelief washing over her face. Cole felt a strange sense of clarity. The fight was over. The land was hers, at least half of it. He looked at Anna, truly looked at her. She wasn't a temporary inconvenience, a fleeting shadow. She was here to stay. And in a way he hadn't expected, he was okay with that. More than okay. Congratulations, Anna, Cole said, his voice surprisingly steady. It's yours. Half of it, anyway. He even managed a small, genuine smile. The weight of his past, of his cynicism, felt a little lighter. This wasn't a loss. It was a new beginning for both of them. A new partnership. The moon, a razor's edge against the bruised velvet of the sky, grudgingly offered scant illumination. A frigid wind, redolent with pine and the distant promise of snow, worried the loose planks of the barn, a familiar nocturnal symphony to Cole. He'd been sunk in a profound, dreamless sleep when a different cadence, a horse's shrill shriek of terror followed by the heavy thud of hooves, jolted him awake. He was upright before his mind fully processed the threat, his hand instinctively closing around the rifle propped beside his cot. Downstairs, Anna was already a blur of motion, a dark figure against the faint, nascent glow from the kitchen window. Her hair, typically constrained in a neat braid, whipped around her face as she wrestled on her boots. Horses, she gasped, her voice a taut wire of fear and simmering rage. Silas. The name hung between them, bitter as gall. Their eyes met, a wordless compact passing in the gloom. The judge's decree had been a crushing blow to Silas, and neither doubted his capacity for graceless defeat. Outside, the pandemonium was undeniable. Horses snorted, whinnied, their terror a palpable charge in the air. Shadows detached themselves from the deeper pockets of darkness near the corrals, moving with predatory swiftness. Cole glimpsed the telltale glint of a lantern, then the unmistakable bulk of Silas Crow, a whip coiled in his hand, prodding a small, wiry man to sever the fence. "Hey!" Cole's roar tore through the pre-dawn stillness. He raised his rifle, sending a shot arcing into the sky. The sharp crack echoed, momentarily stunning the panicked horses. Silas spun, his features contorted into a mask of pure, unadulterated fury. "Mercer! Whitaker! You think you can stop me?" he shrieked, his voice raw, gravelly. "These horses are as good as mine." Anna didn't hesitate. Snatching a heavy iron poker from the porch, she launched herself forward, a veritable storm front in the flickering light. "Touch one hair on their heads, Silas Crow, and you'll regret it to your grave." Roused by the gunshot, the ranch hands spilled from their bunkhouse, bleary-eyed but rapidly sharpening their focus. Slim, the oldest and most weathered, cradled an ancient shotgun. "What in the blazes is happening?" he grumbled. Then his eyes narrowed as they fixed on Silas. "Crow, you viper." The confrontation was swift, chaotic. Silas's accomplice, unnerved by the sudden emergence of multiple figures, fumbled with the fence wire. Cole moved with practiced economy, positioning himself to block Silas's retreat. Anna, a whirlwind of righteous indignation, swung the poker, forcing Silas to stumble backward. He dodged, cursing, his gaze flitting between them, recalculating. As the odds shifted, "Get out, Silas," Cole's voice rang with the weight of finality. "It's over." Silas, seeing the resolved faces of Cole, Anna, and the ranch hands, knew he was outmatched. The advantage of surprise had evaporated. He glowered, chest heaving, a vein throbbing in his temple. He was beaten. With one last venomous snarl, he turned and bolted, disappearing into the lingering gloom, his accomplice scrambling close behind. The fading thrum of their horses' hooves dissolved into the distance. The tension slowly leached from the air. The horses, though still skittish, began to settle. Anna let the poker clatter to the porch, her shoulders slumping just perceptibly. Cole moved to her side, his hand finding hers. Her grip was surprisingly fierce, a lingering echo of the adrenaline that had surged through her. "He won't be back," Cole stated, his voice quiet but resolute. "Not after this." Anna nodded, her gaze fixed on the empty space where Silas had vanished. A shiver, not of cold but of profound relief, rippled through her. Good riddance. The eastern horizon began to blush with streaks of rose and gold, announcing the dawn. Slim and the other hands set about checking the horses and mending the severed fence, their movements efficient, familiar. Cole guided Anna back to the porch, a comfortable, deep silence settling between them. The air was crisp, holding the tangible promise of a new day. He turned to her, her hand still nestled in his. Her eyes, usually so guarded, held a raw vulnerability he hadn't witnessed before, a gentle trust that warmed him to his core. "He's gone," Cole reiterated, more for her reassurance than his own, for good. Anna finally met his gaze, a small, genuine smile gracing her lips. "We did it, Cole. Together." He squeezed her hand. "We did." He surveyed the sprawling land, the scarred barn, the rising sun gilding everything in its golden embrace. It was more than just acreage now. It was their land. "So, about that partnership?" Anna's smile widened, a spark igniting in her eyes. "I think it's time we made it official, on the ranch." She paused, her gaze deepening, searching his. "And in life, if you're willing." Cole's heart swelled, a feeling so potent it nearly buckled his knees. He raised her hand to his lips, pressing a soft kiss to her knuckles. "More than willing, Annabelle Whitaker. More than willing." The sun climbed higher, bathing them in its warmth, a silent witness to their new beginning. Hand in hand, they stood on the porch, two solitary souls finally finding their anchor in each other, poised to face whatever the future held together. Legacy of the Sky. The crisp Wyoming air, usually redolent of pine and sagebrush, was thick with the perfume of wildflowers and warm, sweet pie. Today, it also carried the hushed anticipation of 100 guests gathered at the double bar, their gazes fixed on an archway crafted from aspen branches and wild roses. Beneath this natural bower, Cole Mercer, in a dark suit that somehow amplified his ruggedness, offered a rare, unguarded smile. His eyes, typically reserved, now sparkled with expectation. Then Anna appeared. The wind, a playful conspirator, caught the delicate lace of her gown, causing it to billow as she glided down the makeshift aisle. Her hair, usually constrained, flowed freely, a cascade of auburn against the stark white of her dress, adorned simply with a wreath of prairie blossoms. She moved with the familiar, determined grace Cole had come to cherish. Yet today, it was softened by an almost ethereal joy. The old deed, once a source of bitter conflict, was safely tucked away, eclipsed by the promise of a different kind of claim. "You look breathtaking," Cole murmured as she reached him, his voice a low rumble meant only for her. Anna's wide, genuine smile seemed to erase years of hardship and doubt. "You don't look so bad yourself, Mercer," she teased, her hand finding his, a silent acknowledgement of their shared journey. Reverend Johnson, a man whose sermons were as hearty as the Wyoming landscape, began the simple ceremony. He spoke of two hearts finding harbor amid unexpected currents, of forging a future on a foundation tempered by fire. Cole and Anna exchanged their vows, promises carried on the wind, witnessed by the boundless blue sky. When Cole leaned in to kiss his bride, a cheer erupted, blending with the distant whinny of horses and the rustle of leaves. It was a kiss that sealed not merely a marriage, but a legacy. Life on the double bar soon settled into a rhythm of shared purpose and deepening affection. The old bunkhouse, once a bastion of male solitude, was transformed into a vibrant home. The ranch, no longer a battleground of wills, thrived under their combined vision. Anna, with her sharp eye for detail and boundless energy, oversaw the expansion of their cattle herd and the cultivation of new hayfields. Cole, with his unparalleled horsemanship and profound understanding of the land, managed daily operations, his decisions now collaborative, his burdens lightened. A year later, the ranch echoed with a new sound, an infant's cry. Elizabeth and Anna Mercer, with her mother's fiery spirit and her father's quiet strength seemingly held in her tiny grasp, arrived to complete their world. 2 years after that, a boisterous boy, Thomas Cole, joined the family, his laughter echoing through the sturdy timbers of the renovated farmhouse. The mingled scents of baking bread and leather now shared space with the sweet aroma of baby powder and the joyful chaos of young children. Cole often found himself watching Anna, whether she was deftly mending a bridle or patiently teaching Elizabeth the constellations in the vast night sky. The cynical shell he'd built around himself had long since fractured, revealing a man who found profound joy in the simple, profound act of building a life. Anna, too, had shed the mantle of a grieving widow, blossoming into a confident rancher and a loving mother, her spirit as expansive as the Wyoming horizon. One golden afternoon, years later, Cole and Anna sat on the porch swing, observing their children play in the dust. Elizabeth, a spirited girl with Anna's vibrant hair, attempted to herd a flock of chickens into a makeshift corral. Thomas, a miniature version of Cole, meticulously built a small fence around a patch of wildflowers, humming an off-key tune. Cole reached for Anna's hand, his fingers tracing the lines etched by years of sun and hard work. Remember that first winter? He mused, a slow smile spreading across his face. You thought I was a thief, and I thought you were a conniving schemer. Anna laughed, a rich, warm sound. And here we are, she said, her gaze sweeping over the thriving ranch, the sturdy barn, the children who were the living embodiment of their unlikely union. A whole world built on a torn deed and a lot of stubbornness. He squeezed her hand. More than stubbornness, Anna. A whole lot of love. The sun dipped low, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, a fitting backdrop for the legacy they had forged. Their children, unaware of the tumultuous beginnings, grew up steeped in the rhythms of the land, inheritors of not just a ranch, but a love story as vast and enduring as the Wyoming sky itself. Cole and Anna watched them, their hearts full, knowing that the double bar, once a symbol of division, was now the unbreakable heart of their family, a testament to what two determined souls could build when they finally chose to stand together.